Hi, this is Vicki York and welcome to my channel. Forgive me up front for sounding like I'm panting. I'm a little bit out of shape and the humidity here in Middle Tennessee is about 125%. I just wanted to share a little bit about the fact that the God life can be difficult. It can just be hard, you know? And this is just something that the Lord's been talking to me about lately, because I was almost starting to feel guilty that my days so often felt difficult. And what happened is that a lot of days when I get home, my friend, she's kind of my roommate, but not really. I mean, I have a studio apartment that is attached to my house. So anyway, the friend who lives in my studio apartment, if I see her when I come home, you know, she asks, okay, so how was your day? You know, natural question. And I realized that day after day, I kept giving her the same answer. I kept giving her some version of, it was hard. It was difficult. And I kept giving her different versions of that. Oh, look at that. Look at where it's washed out. Goodness. If I ever disappear and no one can find me, send them here to the Greenway. Anyway, so I realized that I kept answering it in that way, and I was starting to feel a little bit guilty because it didn't, like when I answered her that way, I didn't feel like I was complaining, because complaining just kind of feels a certain way in your soul. It just feels yucky, you know? I don't like to listen to complaints, and I don't like to be a complainer. But it felt different than that. And so, of course, when anything puzzles me and I can't figure something out, I always talk to the Lord about it. So I'm like, Lord, okay, what's going on? I come home, and if someone asks me how my day was, my first response is to say that it was difficult. And I'm just feeling bad about that because, here's the reason, because I enjoy life. I love my life. I appreciate my life. I really feel like my life is a gift from God. I know it is. So I felt like the Lord prompted me to think about a particular day in my life. And it goes back, gosh, maybe almost 2 decades now. But there was this one day when a friend of mine and I went to Fall Creek Falls. We used to do that once in a while, and we would camp and we would hike. And there was this one particular day when we decided to do a longer hike. And what this trail did is it went all the way into and then back out of the Fall Creek Falls Gorge, which is big. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. If you haven't ever been to that state park, you've missed out. And you need to go immediately because it's so gorgeous. And the gorge, gosh, y'all, I am out of shape. I'm so sorry I'm panting. But isn't this all this beautiful? Isn't this great? This is the Clarksville Greenway, and I love it with my whole heart. Anyway, so we did this hike, and it ended up being 12 miles long, and it took us pretty much all day. And to some people, 12 miles might not seem like really that long, but you have to consider that the first half of the hike was pretty much straight down, and the second half of the hike was pretty much straight up. There were a lot of places that were rocky. It was just definitely one of those trails that you would call strenuous, and then there were these other things that happened, and some of them were so grueling that, you know how when you go through something and at the end of it you end up just like laughing and laughing and laughing because it was so crazy and so terrible. So one of the things that happened is that I stepped into a bed of seed ticks. Like all of a sudden my ankles were itching, my feet were itching, and so we stopped, and I'm ripping off my hiking boots and my socks, and we look at my feet and my ankles, and I'm covered with seed ticks. And if you don't know what those are, they're ticks, but they're so small, they're really hard to see. And so we're sitting there in the woods, you know, like, oh boy, because I mean, it's just awful. You don't want them burrowing into your skin, and it's so much. And so whenever we did hikes, the quote weapons that we took were one little thing of pepper spray and then a buck knife. I would bring the pepper spray, and my friend Debbie would bring her husband's buck knife. And so thank goodness for that knife, and thank goodness for the fact that it was really sharp, because what we did is I turned it on its side and scraped all those seed ticks off of my ankles and feet. And eventually I was able to get them off like that. And I put my boots back on and we carried on for the rest of the day. So by the end of this day, we felt like we were just going to die. Just lie down on the path and just die. And but it was so great. You talk about a sense of accomplishment. And I remember we got so tickled, we just started laughing because we kept talking about how it felt like that we were going to look down and our feet and our ankles were going to just be bloody stumps. And so somehow we got on this stupid, crazy conversation about, how we felt like our feet, we were walking around on bloody stumps. Oh my goodness, it was just painful. It was painful to walk, and I'm sure we limped back to our campsite and slept very good that night. So anyway, I told you that whole story to say that the Lord brought that day to my mind. He brought that experience to my mind. And what I realized is that if someone were to ask me to list the 10 most enjoyable days of my whole life, that day would be on the list. I mean, I've lived more than 60 years, and yet that day, with all its pain and effort and bugs and difficulty, would absolutely be on that list. It was just one of the best days of my whole life, and I have no doubt that Debbie would say the same thing. So here's the thing, is I feel like the Lord was using that to show me that difficult and bad don't have to have anything in common. In other words, if you say something was really, really hard, it doesn't automatically mean that it was bad in any way, shape, or form. Like, to say something is difficult is not the same as complaining. It was a fact that 12-mile hike into and out of a gorge, it's a fact that was hard. That took everything out of me. There's no complaining in that, because it's just a fact. And there's no complaining in it because I would turn around and do it again next weekend, because it was so amazing. It was so wonderful. And so I feel like the Lord was kind of assuring me. And well, for those of you who don't know, I head up a food pantry and soup kitchen in Clarksville, Tennessee. I mean, we do a lot, and it's very intense work. Pretty much all my employees would tell you the same thing. It's intense. It's not easy, but it's good. And leading the charge at Manna Cafe, the fact that that's difficult is okay. It can be difficult and it can be really good at the same time. And we have the honor of serving a whole lot of people. We feed a whole lot of people. And then in the middle of it, we're able to serve them as Jesus serves. We're able to love them with His love and share the Word of God with them. And believe me, it's not perfect. We are flawed. There's a lot that we could be doing better, for sure. But you know what? It's always going to be that way, because it's just a bunch of us flawed people trying to do this. But the truth remains, it's also a good thing. It's hard, but it's good. And so much of the God life is like that. And I'll tell you what, I have felt like free and unburdened since the Lord showed me this, because so much of the God life is like that. I mean, we are never told that being a Christian makes things easy. I mean, whoever it was who said or assumed that by giving their life to Christ, that suddenly things would be hunky-dory. and everything would fall into place. No, 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 no. That's absolutely delusional. That is so far from the truth. The Word of God actually promises us that we're going to experience hardship and trouble and suffering. Part of becoming like Jesus Christ equals suffering. Like, you can't even separate. You can't separate Christianity from the cross. You can't separate the God life from suffering. You just can't do it. They go hand in hand. And so some people might say, well, then what's the point? Like, why become a Christian? Why give your life to the Lord? Why would you do that if it's hard, if it's difficult, and if it involves suffering? Well, because the alternative is a life without God, which I can't even wrap my brain around that. Oh my goodness. To me, that just sounds like hell on earth. The beauty and the wonder of the God life in the middle of the hard stuff, there's so much beauty, there's so much good. There's joy. There's a joy that you can tap into that I guarantee you've never felt it, anything like it. I mean, maybe you've been happy before, but there's a joy in the middle of the difficulty and living for Him and belonging to Him and being one with Him. There's a joy you just cannot replicate anywhere else. And so is it worth it to become one of His, to become His own, and to give Him your allegiance as your God? Oh yeah. Oh, it is so worth it. It's so worth it. But I think I just want to encourage all of you today who might be in a season where there's a lot of things that are intense. Your vocation and your place in life maybe takes a lot out of you every day. You know what? It's okay. If at the end of the day you kind of flop down in your favorite chair and say something like, "Oh Jesus, that was so hard," that's all right. It's part of the God life. It can also mean that it's very, very good at the same time. Just be encouraged. I just wanted to share that today because I know I'm not the only one, and it is good to encourage each other. So my prayer is that you have absolutely supernatural strength, and that the joy that comes with this kind of life, meaning the life in which you are one with Jesus Christ, that you would experience the joy that comes with that and the deep, deep, deep peace that can come right in the middle of the difficult stuff. So, bless you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.